Hey everyone, welcome to week 4 of the college football season. My name is Mike Browning. I'm the host of the College Football Road Trip at CFBRoadtrip.com. And we are back home after about a week and a half out on the road. We had some great trips to Syracuse and Buffalo, a great experience in Niagara Falls. My plan right now is to work on my first post about my Syracuse trip this weekend, so be ready to go out there next week and see that on my blog. And then the week after that, we'll work on our Buffalo experience as well. In the meantime, we have an amazing slate of games coming up for week 4 after going 7-3 during our week 3 games. So with that said, let's just dive into this week's games. Our first game is going to be a Friday night matchup in the ACC. We have Wake Forest traveling to Virginia. Wake Forest is a team that's looked pretty decent so far this year. Virginia was looking pretty decent, but then dropped an egg last week against North Carolina. North Carolina came out against them and looked really good. So because of that, I have to go with the team that has the most momentum going into this game, and that happens to be Wake Forest. So I think Wake Forest is going to go into Virginia and pull off the win. Wake Forest over Virginia on Friday night. Our next game is the Iron Skillet game. We have SMU traveling to TCU. So a Dallas-Fort Worth matchup going on here. This is always a heated rivalry between the two. They obviously did not play last year because of COVID issues. So they're back to the field this year, and both teams are undefeated going into this game. Now, SMU did have to pull off a miracle last week with a Hail Mary to win their game. TCU had a little bit easier time. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and pick TCU to be able to win this matchup this week. I have TCU winning at home over SMU. Our next matchup is a Big 12 conference game. We have Texas Tech traveling to Texas. Both of these teams have struggled a little bit. Texas looked really good last week, but it was Rice who might be the worst of the FBS teams so far this year. Texas Tech did have to struggle to win a couple of their games. So the question is, which one is going to be able to rise to the occasion? I think that because this is a home game, Texas is going to start putting things together a little bit more. I think the quarterback change was a good thing for them. So because of that, I think Texas is going to have the momentum on their side in this game. So because of that, I'm picking Texas. I have Texas winning at home over Texas Tech in Big 12 play. Our next game is another Big 12 matchup. We have number 25 Kansas State traveling to Oklahoma State. Both of these teams are undefeated, although I think Kansas State has had the better team and a better win so far this year. Oklahoma State is undefeated but struggled to win against Tulsa and then barely pulled off a 1-point win at Boise State last week. Kansas State does have a pretty impressive win against Stanford that at the time wasn't that impressive, but Stanford has looked pretty decent since. So because of that, I think Kansas State is the better team in this matchup, and so I'm going to pick them to win on the road. I have Kansas State winning at Oklahoma State in Big 12 play. Speaking of Stanford, we're going to go to a Pac-12 matchup next. We have number 24 UCLA traveling to Stanford. We know that UCLA lost last week at home to Fresno State, but it was a pretty close loss. Stanford, I already mentioned, lost to Kansas State a couple of weeks ago. They've looked pretty decent since then. So the question is basically, is UCLA going to have a bounce back game, or is Stanford going to be able to continue to push UCLA down? I think after that loss last week, UCLA has a lot to play for to try to continue to be competitive in the Pac-12 South. They're still right there since the Fresno State was a non-conference loss. So because of that, I think UCLA has the momentum in this game. UCLA will win on the road at Stanford in Pac-12 play. Next, let's go to a Big 10 matchup. We have Rutgers traveling to number 19 Michigan. I just saw Rutgers play in person a couple weeks ago against Syracuse. They looked really ugly in that game, but they were able to pull off a 10-point win. And then they turned around and had another nice win last week, although it was obviously against a less superior opponent. Michigan, on the other hand, has looked pretty decent so far this year. I think because of that, they're going to be able just to pull it off this week. Rutgers has struggled a little bit. I think that they'll come back down to earth this week, especially playing in the big house. So because of that, I have number 19 Michigan winning at home over Rutgers in Big Ten play. Next, let's go to an ACC matchup. We have number 9 Clemson traveling on the road to NC State. NC State is a team that I thought was a lot better than they probably are. I had them winning a week or two ago, and they lost that game. On the other hand, Clemson has really struggled over the last couple weeks. They've fallen in the rankings, even though they've pulled out wins, because the wins have been by very minor amounts against lesser opponents, especially last week against Georgia Tech, having to just hold on the end to keep Georgia Tech from coming back and winning that game. I'd love to pick an upset here, but I just don't have the gumption to do it. I think Clemson is going to continue to find ways to eke out wins against inferior opponents until they play somebody that's a little bit better. Because of that, I have to pick Clemson in this game. I have number 9 Clemson winning on the road at NC State in ACC play. Our next matchup, we have another Big 12 matchup. We have West Virginia traveling to number 4 Oklahoma. Oklahoma is another one of those teams that has struggled a little bit again this season. Against Tulane, only winning by 5. Against Nebraska, only winning by 7. The defense is the ones that had to pull out the win against Nebraska last week. The question is, how long will it take for the offense to find its groove and start scoring points? West Virginia, on the other hand, had a very impressive win against Virginia Tech last week. Will they be able to continue to pull off that momentum? Oklahoma, I just cannot bet against Oklahoma, especially against a non-ranked opponent. I think they'll have bigger opponents ahead. Because of that, I'm going to pick Oklahoma to win at home over West Virginia in Big 12 play. But I think it still will be a pretty close game until Oklahoma can find their offense. Next, let's go to a matchup between ranked teams. We have number 12 Notre Dame traveling to number 18 Wisconsin. Notre Dame finally started putting things together a little bit last week after a couple of struggles against Florida State and Toledo. They looked pretty decent against Purdue. I had Purdue pulling off an upset in that one. I obviously lost that matchup last week. The question is will I do it again? Will I go against Notre Dame again? And the answer is yes. I think Wisconsin is a ranked team. They're a little bit better than Purdue. They're obviously playing this one at home, I believe. Or at least at a neutral site. Notre Dame could easily win this game. This could be another one that I regret picking against next week. But I think Wisconsin wants to pull off a win and show that they're for real in the Big Ten. Because of that, I pick a slight upset in this one. I have number 18, Wisconsin, winning at home over number 12, Notre Dame. And then finally, for our last game this week, we have an SEC matchup against ranked opponents. We have number 7, Texas A&M, traveling to number 16, Arkansas. We know what Arkansas did against Texas a couple weeks ago, but Texas A&M is a much stronger opponent. Texas A&M is a team that needs to show it's for real in the SEC West. Arkansas wants to do that as well. Whichever team wins this one's going to have a lot of momentum. It's going to be right there with Alabama in the SEC West. The question is which team. A&M just has too much to play for. Jimbo Fisher needs to show that Texas A&M is for real. I think that he has a lot more pressure on him at this point than Arkansas has pressure on them. So because of that, I'm going to play and go for Texas A&M in this game. I have number 7, Texas A&M, winning on the road at number 16, Arkansas in SEC play. So those are our matchups for this week. A lot of really strong games out there. There's a couple games I just didn't have room to pick that I also think will be really good games. So go out there, watch a lot of football this weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week.